stage is yours.
Thank you very much. Well, I just wanted to start by saying thank you, everybody, for joining me in this discussion today, because change management is something I've been thinking about for a long, long time, and frankly, change management, but specifically the role communicators play in it, is under-discussed and frankly underappreciated. So let me get things going and just share my screen, and then let's rock and roll. All right. That looks backwards. Let's try that again. All right, fantastic. Well, first things first, my name is Evan Helmlinger. I lead the knowledge management team here at Appspace. So what I do is I partner with our customers, I partner with our partners and resellers, and really help them develop the resources and strategies and understanding they need to craft meaningful experiences for their employees. Not everybody is software savvy. Not everybody even likes software, frankly. I try to make the complicated very simple and really make sure folks don't just feel comfortable, but feel confident. Now, I know that everybody here has sat through a lot of presentations today, so many great sessions, so many great speakers. It can feel a little bit like speed dating. So in that tradition, I'm just going to tell you what you really want to know, which is my likes, Oxford commas and style guides, and my dislikes, comma splices and dangling modifiers. This right here pretty much tells you everything you need to know about me. So let's dive in. Talking about change, I have to admit that I do not love the term change management. It feels very corporate, and it feels like a strategy or like a product that you pull off the shelf when you need it and put it back when you don't. And I bristle a little bit at that assumption, because change to me is personal and it's ubiquitous. And because of that, it's constant at any scale, from the gradual accumulation of professional development, professional experience that I think all of us are feeling today, to the huge, huge changes that organizations have to adapt to pretty much every day, right? And because it's constant, every message we send drives some sort of change. What do I mean by that? A message can inform, inspire, bolster culture, influence behavior, intentionally or not. And the unintentional effect can be very insidious. So, for example, the flat, forgettable message on the message board, that only reinforces behavior that, hey, internal comms can be ignored, right? That's obviously unintended, but we have to be cognizant that everything we put out there drives some sort of behavior, some sort of change. And so to that point, the core function of internal comms is to drive and manage change. I don't say a core function. I truly believe that it is the core function, because change is so ubiquitous, right? So when change fails, we can almost say that it is a communication issue. It's not our fault necessarily, but something about the transfer of knowledge and understanding to the folks who have to change, who have to adapt, your colleagues, whomever. That something was missed, something didn't really work right. And so what is the specific issue that we're dealing with here? It's the lack of a thoughtful strategy and a plan. I bet everybody here on the call has been through some sort of change with their company or some other organization or even their personal life. And oftentimes leaders and executives, they really spend a lot of time getting the operational side of things right, the logistical side of things right, but maybe neglect the human side of things. That's where we come in, frankly. So this isn't just me waxing poetic. Here at Appspace, we do put together a report every year just to kind of take the temperature of the workforce that we consult with. And what we found, is frankly a little bit sobering. 80% of employees rank consistent communication as very, very important. And yet about 2/3 or so say their organization just delivers inconsistent messaging across other channels. That's a problem, right? And so to put it bluntly, and forgive my candor here, change won't stick without that strategic connection. It just won't. People resist change. It takes a long time to build a new routine, a new habit. And so really, really thinking about the role comms plays in that strategy, how we can influence and drive behavior and really support the people around us, that is the most critical aspect of change, maybe even more so than the operational side of things. So I love this quote. I threw it up here. The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. When there is no strategy, these assumptions begin to creep in, and then there's a misalignment of understanding, of expectations, of what's important and what's not. And the sort of worrisome part of it is that a lot of it is sort of beyond our scope of awareness. And we want to make sure that we are plugged into the change as communicators and making sure that things are communicated in a way that really supports not the change necessarily, but our colleagues. We have a responsibility to them. So all those stats previously, that was about business as usual. And so during times of change, that is a major, major problem. Maybe you can coast on an average Tuesday, but when there's a merger, there's a major change occurring that affects a lot of people. These little insidious issues, they get blown up and they can really sabotage the change itself. So what does this mean for us as communicators? Because a lot of times change management, as I mentioned earlier, is operational, is about the numbers or about the systems. But at the end of the day, any organization is a network of people, right? So what does this mean for us as communicators, and how do we kind of fit into this larger puzzle? So change or internal comms, I think everybody knows here, it can be disrupted by a lot of external factors. And we're just the lucky ones at the middle of it, right? But even though it may not be our fault that a change is going sideways a little bit, it is still our responsibility to communicate and coordinate understanding in a way that supports our colleagues, right? Because we have a responsibility to them to make the unfamiliar make sense, to provide clear instructions on what to do and when to do it, to give reassurance during times of anxiety. I think this is maybe the most important one. And then finally, to create and really bolster that environment where others can succeed. I think everybody we work with wants to be successful. They want to be comfortable and confident in the work that they do. And as internal comms, we are really facilitating understanding and culture. And so we do have that central role. But that responsibility is not just a professional responsibility, it's a human one, frankly. Again, if anybody has been through major change, there's a culture of anxiety. The vibe is weird, the vibe is off, but we can control the clarity, we can control the messaging in many ways. And by doing that, we are assuaging the difficulties, the hiccups that come with any change and how they affect our colleagues. So what are we going to discuss today? We're going to discuss 3 elements of any change management strategy, elements where internal comms play an essential role. We're going to talk about being obsessively clear in your messaging. We're going to talk about locking into a deeper and specific feeling or emotion. And we're going to create an environment conducive to change. I bet this sounds obvious, right? It should. It's what human beings crave during times of change. But we can shape a process around these 3 points that really allows us to fulfill that responsibility that we have to our colleagues, right? So let's start with the first one, being obsessively clear with our messaging. Now, let's get the basics out of the way. We are all communicators. We all know the very, very fundamental aspects of internal comms. Calls to action, the right medium, and being brief and concise. This is, internal comms 101. I call this, in fact, the holy trinity of internal comms, but I wanted to put this in front of us because everything we discuss today, this will remain a constant. So put it away, that's great, but it's not going away. So that's not enough, though. We're good communicators. We practice these 3 elements all the time, but frankly, it really is not enough during times of change, significant or insignificant. And during times of change, there are some key threats that are disguised as advantages. And I want to talk about these because we may think they're positives, but they actually create a very complex, challenging issue that, as internal communicators, we have the ability to solve. And that is the availability of choices and the big picture. So let's start with the choices. So it feels good to have choices. I think everybody here can relate. If anybody has Netflix, I would ask you to reflect on how much time you spend looking for something to watch versus actually watching something, right? Even if the choices are good, it still creates a little bit of decision paralysis. And I think good is maybe being a little generous to some Netflix movies, but we see this all the time, day in and day out. And that paralysis can look like resistance, or it can even look like apathy. Oftentimes folks who are stubborn and resistant to change, the value of that change or the way they participate just is not clarified for them. And oftentimes there's assumptions about, this is good, this is bad, I don't do this, I do that. And that confusion, it upsets people. I mean, it upsets me in my current job when it happens, not that it happens much. So how do we solve this, right? We can reduce the choices to as few as possible. One, if you can. And this may sound, like, what do I mean by this? Reducing the choices, do we have control over that? But I'll give you an example. We were working with a customer who knew how to use Appspace, but they wanted some advice on how to upskill and train their colleagues to get the most out of it as well. And so what they initially did is they set up office hours twice a week, Q&A, come on in whenever you feel like it. We'll, answer questions. We'll keep it open and loose, right? Well, they were surprised that attendance was so dismal. And, they came to us and we were talking through the issue with them. And we advised them, get the office hours out of there. You host 2 workshops, one for one set of time zones, one for the other. And this is their opportunity to ask the questions they want to ask. You have option 1, option 2, and people did show up. Because the core thing I want you to take away with this point is that when there's so much availability, there's no urgency. In fact, you can almost think of them as inversely related. And it applies to everything that we work with, in our day-to-day jobs. I mean, do you want to come through 15 potential venues for a holiday party or 3? Do you want 6 different ways to log timesheets or 1? Do you want, policy information to be stored in 3 or 4 different places or 3 or 4 different systems to accomplish the same thing? No, you want a single or really a consolidated source of truth. And I want to be clear that we're not taking away their free will. We are not saying you can't do this, you can't do that necessarily. We are providing the clarity. We are providing the direction that they frankly need in order to navigate this challenging time, this uncertain time even. So let's pivot to the big picture, because that's the other side of this. The big picture, it's critical. It's critical for executives and leaders, of course. It's critical for those overseeing the change, maybe from an operational standpoint. And it's critical for us as communicators, because we need to know the context in which we're sending out messages and communicating and kind of shaping the culture as best we can. But for the average employee, it may be interesting, but it's not particularly useful. Because remember, our mission is to influence behavior during times of change. So what do? How do we communicate? When we do communicate, we script the desired immediate action, almost to the exclusion of everything else. So I say script because we do have to be very, very specific. And I'll take an example from a new intranet, for example. Saying something like, log in and check it out today is so vague that someone could click into it and click out, and what benefit does that generate? But if we communicate a little bit more clearly, a little bit more specifically, log in, go to your user profile, upload a picture, and complete some of the information today, please. That is an easy, small win that really does drive the larger goal of organization-wide adoption, right? So you may also be thinking, but it's necessary to provide some context, right? Like, we don't want to keep them in the dark. We have to talk about what are we doing here? Why are we doing this? And in that case, I would always recommend that we focus on 2 particular points in time in a process: the right now, the immediate action, and the after we're done. So, you can fill out your user profile with the new intranet today, please, because after this change occurs, we're going to have a centralized hub for all information and news within the company. That is enough. And any more about, between then and now can muddy the waters. offering them, actions, small detailed actions, specific tasks for them to do, but are not relevant 2 months from now, that just, like I said, muddies the waters and makes it very, very confusing. So you can focus on 2 points in time, right now and after we're done. Essentially, what I want you to do now and why I want you to do it, but framed within the time frame. So I want to move on to the second part about locking into a deeper feeling or emotion, because I wrote this purposefully to be a little bit vague. Of course, people want to be, have a deep feeling or a deep sense of commitment or belonging within their company or organization, wherever they are. But with change, there are two specific emotions that really are the key levers. Just two. It is anxiety about the unfamiliar, and it is pride in one's identity. These are the levers that can push someone forward or stop them dead in their tracks. And we all feel this every day. I mean, anxiety about the unfamiliar is common, but pride in one's identity, especially as it relates to their professional identity, is so key, and maybe even the more powerful lever to really get people committed to changing behavior or changing routine, whatever the case may be, without being upset by it, for example. So I want to kind of throw out an example that I think illustrates anxiety pretty well. We'll start there. And it's about key milestones in life, right? So starting a new job, buying a house, having kids. The best things in life, the best things are friggin' terrifying in the moment, right? Because we are hardwired to resist change, and rightly so. It's what kept Rocky the prehistoric hunter away from the cave that may have a bear in it. There might be a bear, there might be danger. I'm anxious about it. I'm going to avoid it. That's great. But it's not helpful when we're trying to, create a culture of change, a sense of comfort with change. So what do we do here? Let's shrink that bear down to a bug. Let's shrink that desired behavior down to just one small step. And this is very, very related to the scripting the next step, because it has to be small and easy. You have to get those little wins at the beginning to build that momentum. And that may sound, almost obvious. Of course, we need to get small wins. Of course, we want to build momentum. But you really need to plan out the actions and almost the comms campaign for what you want folks to do and when you want them to do it. Because, too often it's a little bit ad hoc. Easy, easy, hard is not something that you can just kind of bandy around, almost flippantly, right? So let's shrink that behavior down to just one small step. And I'll give you an example. We worked with a company that was deploying an intranet, actually, and they had a significant number of frontline workers, in addition to a lot of folks who sat at a desk. And they couldn't push the app to their phones. They just weren't set up for that. They had to educate everybody, the frontline workers especially, on how to download it and procure it. So that's an immediate friction point with any deployment. And they started drafting these instructions, these one sheets, with, hey, here's how you do it. This is what you do, yada, yada, where you go, how it works. And that sounds reasonable. But even if everything someone needed to know was on one concise page, these folks were on their feet all day. Whether it's at a manufacturing facility or a hospital, this was one of those, they didn't have the time to even sit down with a piece of paper and go through instructions. That environment was too fast-paced, and sitting down for even a little bit was way too disruptive and potentially dangerous, since their attention was elsewhere. So we chatted with them, we kicked around a few ideas, and where we landed on was to print out a stack of postcards, a bunch of them, and they had QR codes that would automatically download the app to the person's phone. And so they didn't have to do anything except scan the QR code, and they were exactly where the larger company wanted them to be. And they put them everywhere. Hey, you're going to another department, grab a stack, leave it there. Hey, you're going, out the front door, leave a stack in the lobby. And when they eventually went live, they were very, very pleased with the number of frontline workers who hopped right onto the platform right away from their phones, because they made it so easy for them that it really didn't require even much cognitive work to participate in that change. So that's anxiety. Let's talk about the other side of this. Let's talk about pride. So everyone here, we want to feel proud of who we are and what we do. not just who we are on a personal level or a private life, but professionally, we want to know that we are participating in something meaningful, and that something is something that matters, frankly. And our identities, the ones we adopt for ourselves, they shape our behavior, right? So, how do we tap into that? When our identities shape our behavior, we have to connect the outcome to their identity and how they want to feel about their work. And what I mean by this is, essentially what advertising calls positioning. How can we position the change in a way that aligns with how people want to feel about their work? And I'll give you a couple quick examples, and you tell me which ones of these you would prefer. So we're deploying a new record-keeping system at our hospital. Does that sound fun? I would assume not super fun. But what about this? We're accelerating the delivery of care to our patients. That's the same thing. It's the same action. It's the same announcement. It's the same change that we're bringing to the larger group. But the second one taps into why people get into healthcare to begin with, right? Let's start another one. I mean, we're onboarding the UX designers of a recent acquisition. Acquisitions, mergers, very, very challenging times for a lot of folks. Onboarding designers is just, shifting things around in the org chart. But at the same time, we're building that innovative, dynamic team, and they're going to create an experience no one has ever seen before. Again, these two bottom options are the same thing. And like our friends in advertising, positioning it appropriately to, again, align with how folks want to feel about their work, how folks want to feel about themselves when they go to work, and that it's meaningful, and that the time that they spend there, a huge portion of their life, is valuable. So lastly, I want to talk about the third option, creating an environment conducive to change. Now, we've all seen this in action. A little personal story. My son is 3, almost 4, as he'll remind us. And we're trying to build the habit in him of eating whole foods, typically nutritious foods, tasty, but overall better for him, like yogurt, apples, things like that. And we're going through this phase, one of so many, where all he wanted were cupcakes, reheated pizza, French fries, popsicles, all fine in moderation. I love myself a good popsicle, of course. But for a few weeks, it was as if no other food existed. And what was really strange is he had traditionally been a good eater. So what's going on? Now, at the same time, he's going through another phase where he is following us everywhere. He's our shadow. He is basically a little mini me, and he wants to do everything we want to do. He wants to go wherever we're going. And when we're cooking or preparing food, he's right behind us when we open up the fridge or freezer. And we realized that at his eye level, that's where we kept the cupcakes, the pizza, the French fries, all that stuff. At our eye level is where we kept all the food that we wanted him to eat. So his environment, his day-to-day experience was not even including the things we wanted to promote with him. The only food he saw was the stuff that he ended up wanting. So my point is that often, not always, often, it is far easier to change an environment than it is to force a behavior. In fact, if you're able to change the environment rather than forcing a behavior, that is usually the way to go. And it could be, changing a little, sort of a process or things like that. And while every change is different, they all have some key elements in place. For one, we put the new way of doing things right in front of others and make it the new normal. And that requires a lot of commitment. And this may be one of the most difficult things to change, because it is putting a little bit of pressure on everybody. But as an example, the new intranet, that should be the homepage. The new team should meet every week to develop that collaborative bond. And the new timesheet system should be the only place where timesheets are recognized. This is almost related to the previous point about availability of choices. The change should be one where operationally and the way we communicate about it represents a full commitment to that future state. But then again, you may be wondering, but aren't we still forcing a change? And what role does internal comms play in all this, right? These are a little bit of operational things. Maybe you don't control, what the homepage is, but you can promote the new normal. So what do I mean by that? Making it where people want to be. You can tap into their pride. You can tap into a little bit of FOMO maybe, or that Jones effect where they want to be where their colleagues are. So recognizing those teams who are in the office routinely and how vibrant the collaboration is. It's not about badge swipes. It's not about, butts in seats or putting value to the real estate, the commercial real estate that you have. It's about promoting the vibrancy of collaboration that is only possible in the office. Or the new document system, that is the single source of truth. The old document system should be archived, should be put away, should be put out of view for all employees. Oftentimes there's a hesitancy here because folks want that backup. They want that archive just in case the change doesn't go well. It isn't going to go well when we're kind of waffling on whether the old or new is the one that we're going to be using. And then publishing news on a new intranet. That's a great example. Not also on the old system. If they want to know about the latest announcements from our CEO or whatever the case may be, it is only on that new system. That's the new normal. And that is something that us as internal communicators can really lean into. Because for me, internal comms people, they are more culture coordinators. The way information and vibes, frankly, kind of ricochet around an organization is within internal comms' purview, right? So I want to end on this quote because I love this quote. Life does not get better by chance, it gets better by change. Because I think our default is to be anxious about change, but it's such an opportunity. If we approach it with the right tools, the right mindset, the right approach, change can be such a wonderful thing. And it's something that we can share with all our colleagues and partners as well. So thank you, everybody. I think we are just about at time. I think, maybe we can take a couple questions. I'm not sure if the administrators will allow that.
Yeah. Welcome back. Thank you so much, Evan, for your great presentation. Christina, I think we were curious as to if anyone has any questions from Evan's presentation. Just take a look in the chat and see how it's going.
Let's see.
Yeah, I see a couple questions.
Audience questions.
Evan's talking.
Right. So first question is, the focus on trust and emotions is great. What are the best channels for driving connection at scale? And I love that question because I think it speaks to almost another core responsibility of being an internal communicator, and that is leveraging the channels that you have in a way that is consistent and thoughtful. So consistency of messaging, making sure that the frontline workers and the desk workers receive the same message, or if it does need to be tweaked a little bit for their role or their function, making sure that there is no confusion about, is this the right information? Is that message stale? Is this one fresh? Really having almost like an omni-channel approach, a strategy in place, leveraging all the tools you have at your disposal. Like if a frontline worker relies on push notifications, making sure that everything is consistent. So when they're at the water cooler or at the break room, they've seen the same thing. They're talking about the same thing, and they can share an interpretation based on a single source of truth. Next question, how do you get leadership on board with prioritizing communication over just getting it done? I love this question, and I get asked it all the time. Now, executives and leaders, they are focused on the operations and the money and the way the business is growing and sort of the health of the business. That is totally their responsibility. Totally get that. But oftentimes, every organization has a story about a change that failed. And I think if you can present to your leaders and say, remember that change, it failed because of A, B, and C, and come with them with solutions, not just a general request for comms to be prioritized, but saying, look, if we can leverage these channels, if we can shape our messaging this way, if we can position the change as this and make sure everybody is speaking from the same hymn book, so to speak, leadership is more likely to kind of see that return on investment because they want to remove frictions at the end of the day. All right. One last question here. How are you effectively reaching field employees? This is also a great question. A lot of the work that my company does is connecting the front line with the desk workers, because there's almost this unintentional hierarchy that just makes that disconnect even harder. We actually worked with a customer at a frontline manufacturing plant that wasn't aware they were part of a larger company. That's a internal comms and culture nightmare. And so again, you have to be cognizant of the channels that they see throughout the day. So for example, are they using bulletin boards in the break room? Are they seeing digital signage on the way in and a different screen on the way out? Really almost mapping out a day in the life and noting the content touch points is valuable information for any larger strategy for reaching them. Awesome. I think that is it.
That's it. Thank you so much, Evan. And honestly, that presentation was full of takeaways, like the part about creating an environment conducive to change. So true. In day-to-day practice, there is so much more resistance when it's not easy to achieve behavioral change. I struggle all the time. I try to make my lunch on a daily basis, but every day I go to Impact, I don't do my groceries fast enough. So,
Good point.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, even leaving the lunchbox.
Thank you so much again, Evan. So, audience, thank you so much for participating. We're actually close to a winner in our leaderboard as well, too. Don't forget, we're giving away a pair of iPod 3 Pros. You have to be on live, by the way, in order to win this, okay? So we're going to announce the winner at the end of our sessions, at the end of CommConnect, sorry. And a few other giveaways and gift cards as well we got going around, all right? So stick around. We don't want you to miss anything. Up next, we're going to have Jay and Dave. We're doing an email roast, okay? So we're going to be taking some boring templates. We're going to be taking some boring emails, and we're going to be roasting them, okay? So we're not trying to offend anybody, but it's good fun. I'm looking forward to some laughs. Christina, are you?
Always a crowd pleaser.
All right. See you in just a moment, guys.